This is like a low-key disrespectful way to introduce this topic, but I wanted to talk about the Vancouver Canucks and an idea that has been going around social media over the past few days as to whether or not the Canucks are broke. Now, I say that fully knowing that I am biting the bait. The Vancouver Canucks are not broke. Francesco Aquilini is not in debt. The Canucks are hiring people, and they're making decisions to bring new faces into the organization. That is very clear. Yesterday, the Vancouver Canucks announced Richard Seeley as a new assistant general manager and the general manager of the Abbotsford Canucks. This is a pretty cool hire, because Seeley is a guy that had built up the Ontario Reign and their AHL affiliate over the past few years. However, with the hiring of Seeley comes a slew of conversation as to whether or not Vancouver and their hiring process indicates a significant lack of spending power that is available to them, potentially at the discretion of the owner. Are the Vancouver Canucks officially broke? Before we dive into more on Richard Seeley, I wanted to take a look at this post made on the R Canucks subreddit. This was made by Francesco Aquilini's burner yesterday morning, so before the Vancouver Canucks actually announced the hiring of Richard Seeley. How concerned are you that Francesco Aquilini will be too cheap to do a proper rebuild? Linked is a post made by Jason Bruff on Twitter on the idea of adding players like Brendan Gallagher. Ryan Johnson tells Thomas Drance that we have to take into account budgeting and where we sit with contracts and with the players on our current roster. Budgeting, eh? Now, this idea that Bruff tweeted about, it's like, hey, Brendan Gallagher is an NHL player that apparently the Vancouver Canucks are interested in. He's making $6.5 million a year, and that's a reasonable dollar amount as like a cap dump quality asset. If you're getting Gallagher, it's not because he's a $6.5 million player, it's because he's a $6.5 million leadership figure that, if you're lucky, Montreal can add some value alongside of. But Bruff's going out there and taking a look at the quote from Ryan Johnson. They have to take into account budgeting when making these additions. Now, what does that mean? There's a salary cap for a reason, right? Every team can spend up to it. The Vancouver Canucks are nowhere near it. Why do they need to think about budgeting when they're thinking about acquiring a player like Brendan Gallagher? The insinuation is whether or not Francesco Aquilini would actually give the team the right to spend that amount of money. A lot of folks are in the comment section here. Hey, you want cap space in a rebuild? It's desirable. So maybe, obviously, this is taken out of context. I swear to gosh, people on this subreddit get off on feeding the cynicism. Holy, Canucks fans are such whiners. Never, never happy. Now, for what it's worth, this is what Ryan Johnson went out there and said about the Richard Seeley hire. Rich is someone I have admired and respected for a long time after watching him run the Kings AHL team in Ontario. Besides knowing the game of hockey inside out, he is a great communicator, goes to work every day with an open mind, and sets his players up for success by creating an environment that tries to eliminate any excuse that would stop them from making progress. Rich understands our values and vision, and I believe his mindset and mentality will fit in nicely with what we are trying to establish with our organization in both Abbotsford and Vancouver. Now, here's a cynical tweet. J-Bo Vancouver. Canucks fans say we want someone with experience. Richard Seeley hired to run Abbotsford. 8 years as a GM of an AHL franchise with an organization that just went through a rebuild. Some Canucks fans, not good enough. Clearly a cheap hire. Welcome to the Taj experience. Content aggregator turned Pied Piper to the brain dead. Summed up perfectly, J-Bo says. Now, what exactly did Taj say about all this? Well, we got some of the transcripts over here. He quote-tweeted the Richard Seeley hiring by saying, hey, nothing against the guy, but this hire isn't going to help with the broke boys talk. It's a very inexperienced front office. It's nothing against him and his experience as being the AHL LA general manager. It's just the collective management group. No nerds, no lawyers, no degrees, no experience. Cheap, cheap, cheap. Another reply says, hiring another ex-player like Seeley would be fine if you already have people in the management team with other skill sets, but they don't. They have a bunch of ex-players and Castonguay. No nerds, and only one lawyer. Budget boys. Essentially insinuating that the team is taking it easy with the kinds of guys that they are hiring. Now, for what it's worth, it was also reported that Ryan Johnson, when he was hired, or promoted at least, to be the Vancouver Canucks general manager, reports came out that he's actually not getting paid a lot of money to do this job, which is something that, he didn't really talk too much about. I personally don't see too much of an issue with it. If Ryan Johnson is okay with the contract that he got, which it seems like he is because he ended up taking the job, then it is what it is. Manny Malhotra supposedly would have been able to exercise his right to seek other employment opportunities and potentially get upwards of $2 million a year as a head coach, but now he's in Vancouver, so maybe the Canucks are not too tight on the dollars, but there is this narrative bubbling around that potentially they are. Tash tweeted this out, someone should have told ownership a rebuild is only for the on-ice portion and not the entire organization. You don't need all cheap rookies in management. Internal hires equal cheap hires, is what he is talking about at the end of the day. And then you also had this, Surrey Canucks saying that it's becoming quite clear the reason Evan Gould isn't the Canucks GM is because of money. The Canucks are broke, might even be close to bankruptcy. The glory days of the Canucks becoming a cup contender, okay, this is like definitely opinionated over there. And what's weird to me is that there are a number of people going on and saying like, hey, that's been true for a decade. The Canucks have always been cheap. This has been clear for years. Anybody who didn't see it coming were just closing their eyes and plugging their ears, hoping for something different. I do wonder if there is an element of truth to that idea that Vancouver is not spending money on potentially nerdy, analytical-driven, new age thinking guys in their organization, and it's the ownership that is preventing them from spending money on those names. Yeah, you have to spend money if you want to get some of the top guys to come into your organization. That would include guys like Evan Gould, that would include guys like Manny Malhotra, for example. But these people in executive roles do not count towards any sort of a salary cap or whatever. You can spend as much money as you want on these assets. Toronto did it with their analytics department when Kyle Dubas was in town. We saw how that worked out for them, but they spent a lot of money on all these extra things, all these different kinds of people, bringing them in to have a new wave of thinking with the Maple Leafs. It doesn't seem like we are seeing something similar to that in Vancouver, but based off of these hires, I'm not going to go out there and say necessarily, oh, the Canucks are broke because they hired a guy who has been a pretty experienced AHL general manager. I'll be honest, though, Richard Seeley is a guy that I had no idea even existed before yesterday when he got hired. I guess it all boils down to namesake and what certain fans' mental image happens to be about the names that are actually brought in. For what it's worth, Jeff Patterson tweeted this out. The Canucks have now hired Darren Hermiston from Kamloops and now Rich Seeley from Powell River for front office jobs. I wonder if their draft strategy will include BC players. Is this also an indication of them being cheap? Hiring people from around BC for front office jobs? How does this affect the Brendan Gallagher talks and the Troy Stetchers of it all? Maybe Luke Shen, you can say. He's an honorary BC Vancouverite after his time with the Canucks. But at the end of the day, it has been a very odd talking point over the past 24 hours or so, seeing people talk about the Canucks being broke as a result of their recent hirings of Richard Seeley as well as Darren Hermiston earlier in the month. You can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Is this actually something that should be discussed? Vancouver potentially not going out there and swinging for the most expensive options on front office positions available to them? Or is this just the way she goes? Because not every fan is going to agree on everything the Canucks end up doing. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this British Rolls 99. Congrats to Richard Seeley for his hiring and becoming the new Abbotsford Canucks GM. And bye.